We have increased the number of refugees that we will accept from the Western Hemisphere. We have built safe mobility offices in Colombia, Ecuador, Guatemala, Costa Rica to reach people where they are so they don't have to take the perilous journey.
Alejandro Mayorkas is the Secretary of Homeland Security. As you know, I'm sure he is being impeached. And he sat with Martha Raddatz of ABC News on This Week, this Sunday. And we really want to spend some time on this interview because a lot comes out. And even Martha Raddatz actually has to sort of grill him a little bit and challenge him, which you don't see very often from ABC News. And in this interview, Alejandro Mayorkas reveals that the Biden administration is actually creating safe zones in foreign countries to bring people here on flights to this country, breaching our national security so that they don't have to actually make the trek to the border. They're actually flying them in. This has been something that's been rumored and discussed and whispered about, but he actually, well, he brags about it in this interview. We'll get to that clip in a moment, but here, take a look at this.
President Biden said this ban will remain in place until the number of people trying to enter illegally is reduced to a level that our system can effectively manage, meaning, as we said, that average of 1,500 encounters or less over a period of 14 days. We said that has never happened. Do you really expect that to happen in the coming months or before Election Day?
Martha, it is 1,500, an average of 1,500 individuals encountered over a 7-day consecutive period. We are driving to that, and that's not all we're doing. We are also communicating throughout the region about the lawful pathways. We are driving people to use.
But that's something you've been doing all along. You've been trying to do that with people. I want to go back to an interview I did with you in March of 2021, 2 months into your tenure as DHS Secretary. You seemed totally confident then that you had that under control. Let's listen to what you told me.
We have seen large numbers of migration in the past. We know how to address it. We have a plan. We are executing on our plan, and we will succeed. This is what we do. But one thing is also clear, that it takes time. It's tough, but we can do it. This is what we do, and we will accomplish our mission.
We will succeed. That was 3 years ago. Since then, 6.5 million migrants have been apprehended along the southern border. It would be very hard to call that a success.
Martha, remember something, that migration is a dynamic phenomenon. It is something that we alone are, it's not just us who is experiencing it, throughout the region and throughout the world. Let's recall what everyone expected when Title 42 was lifted in May of 2023. People expected pandemonium. Our model worked. We drove the numbers down. They go down, they go up. What we need is congressional action. We cannot resource the Department of Homeland Security, the Department of State, the Department of Justice with additional personnel. We need Congress to legislate.
And we know what happened in February with Senate Republicans. President Biden told our David Muir this week that the reason he didn't implement this plan sooner is that he would have been blamed for blowing up that bipartisan deal. So why did you wait 4 months to do this?
Oh, let's look at the timeline. On day one of it.
All right, I'm going to interrupt his lies for just a second here because, yes, Martha Raddatz, I guess, deserves credit to say, you know, I want to show you this video that we had of this interview that we had earlier. But did you notice as soon as she goes to it, Mayorkas says yes, as if he was expecting it. You know, I want to show that to you one more time because listen to him. It's like he got a heads up that Martha Raddatz was going to pull up this old video. Listen to him.
You've been trying to do that with people. I want to go back to an interview I did with you in March of 2021.
Do you hear that? Oh, yeah. It's like if this is a gotcha moment that a journalist would have, you know, like they have the video all prepped and said, well, let me show you what you said. Usually the person who is the subject of the interview wouldn't say, yeah, right, got it. Okay, I know exactly where you're going with this. Right? Maybe I'm just reading into it. But boy, he had his answer. Well, you know, immigration is a fluid thing. This is a dynamic deal. At the time, I thought that we'd be okay. But this man has been an utter failure, except for the fact that he's been 100% successful. Let me explain. If you think that our border should be secure and that people shouldn't be allowed to come in illegally and breach our immigration system and enter our country without any actual accountability, and where we just throw open the gates and let people in willy-nilly, you know, if you actually want to prevent that from happening, he's been a failure. But if that's actually your goal, he's been quite successful. And let's face it, the Democrats, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, the entire party, they've been telling us for years that that is their goal. They're a no borders crowd. They don't think that there should be any restrictions on immigration. They tell us that walls don't work, right? That if you're a good neighbor, then you don't have any walls. And we want to, bring us, you're tired, you're poor, you're hungry, you're huddled masses. They're the ones who think that Donald Trump was a meanie for saying that people can't come in here illegally. That's what they've been saying for years, decades, really. So this whole idea that Alejandro Mayorkas is a failure is only if you think that the intention is to enforce our laws, and they clearly are not. But let's get back to where we were with this interview.
On day one of his administration, President Biden sent Congress a piece of legislation. Title 42, the public health order, was in place until May of 2023. We implemented a regulation that restricted asylum, and then we pressed Congress to resource our department in August with a supplemental funding bill that did not succeed. Then in October, we sought congressional action again. And then we started, Martha, the very difficult work of bipartisan negotiation with Republicans and Democrats.
Yeah, understood. Oh, trust me, I'm on your side on that. I've drunk that Kool-Aid. Don't worry. I'm not going to get in the way of that talking point. It's such a complete bullcrap. Understand something. As he's saying here, in October, they began the tough work of bipartisan negotiations, October of 2023. What took them so long? Why did they wait so long? And by the way, this is the same guy that for every single month leading up to October of 2023, that would be 2.5 years of his tenure as Homeland Security Secretary, under oath, he said there is no crisis, there is no chaos, that we have the border secured. The border is secure, he kept saying. And then suddenly, we need bipartisan work to get a new law here passed. Let's negotiate. Well, why? If the border is secure, if there is no crisis, why do you need to negotiate for something? Everything's great. I thought. That's what you said. This is so maddening to watch. And again, the whole point here is to be able to blame Republicans. That's all they care about. They know that the American voter is pissed off about the border, but they're actually trying to say, listen, we can't change the border at this point. It's too late. All we can do is lie enough to make enough voters think that the crisis is really Republicans' fault. It's audacious, but thankfully they've got people like Martha Raddatz in the media to help them.
And I know you nearly had that bipartisan deal, but it's been 4 months since then, and you just now decided to take this action.
Martha, the bipartisan deal was rejected once. We pressed for it again. It was rejected a second time, and then we developed this and have implemented it.
Yeah. Did any of you wonder why last week Chuck Schumer decided to bring that bill once again to the floor? It was so he could have that answer. See, this was rejected in February. And Raddatz is correct. Okay, after it got rejected, if the president wanted to do something, why didn't you do it then? And by the way, Biden did worse than not do anything. He lied and claimed to the media that he couldn't do anything. We've got those videos. We've done segments on it. He kept saying, no, there's nothing I can do. There's nothing more I can do. You got to give me the power. You got to pass the bill that I want. There's nothing I can do. I can't do anymore. We've had Karine Jean-Pierre saying that all the time. He can't do anymore. Can't do anymore. Can't do anymore. But for 4 months, they did nothing. And then Chuck Schumer, inexplicably, without any explanation, decided to bring this bill to the floor for a vote 10 days ago. Why? So he could have that answer. Yep. It got rejected in February. We decided to bring it back again in May. Once it got rejected, then Joe Biden is a man of action and he did something. Even though for the last 3.5 years, he claimed that he couldn't do anything. Somehow he figured out a way that he could do something, but only Joe Biden could do it because he's that kind of a genius. He plays 4D chess while the rest of us are playing checkers.
And we are at an early stage, and let's not minimize the significance of this move and the significance of operationalizing it. And it requires the cooperation of other countries, which we have secured.
You have been dealing with this for several years. When he ran for president, and this is a big change, when he ran for president, President Biden repeatedly defended the asylum process you already had, you had in place, railed against former President Trump's plan. I want to read what then candidate Biden posted on Twitter back in July of 2019. Trump is fighting tooth and nail to deny those fleeing dangerous situations their right to seek asylum in our nation. We should uphold our moral responsibility and enforce our immigration laws with dignity, not turn away those fleeing violence, war, and poverty. How is this new policy not at odds with what the president said then?
I'm going to let him answer that question, but I need to give you some context and some facts here that Martha Raddatz won't. Let's look at that again. We should uphold our moral responsibility, enforce our immigration laws with dignity, and not turn away those fleeing violence, war, or poverty. Let me just be clear here. There are a very small number of legal reasons that you can claim asylum in our country. All right. Natural disaster is one of them. War is one of them if you're a refugee. Religious persecution, political persecution. These are all legitimate claims for asylum when you walk up to a Border Patrol agent at the border and say, I'm seeking asylum. And then you're given the protection of our country until you have a hearing where a judge can determine whether you're a legitimate refugee. Poverty is not one of them. Poverty is not one of them. Obviously. Logically, it is not one of them. If we allowed people refugee status and afforded them asylum in this country because of claims of poverty, that means we would be opening up our country to about 7/8 of the world population. Because in comparison to our nation and our standard of living, 7/8 of the world is living in abject poverty. Poverty has never been a legitimate reason for asylum in the United States of America. So Joe Biden saying that when he was running for office is completely misguided, stupid, moronic, and criminal, frankly. And Martha Raddatz doesn't know that or chooses not to tell her viewers that. But let's go to Alejandro Mayorkas' answer now.
Said then is what we are living today. We are allowing individuals to access asylum through the ports of entry pursuant to a program that we developed. We are allowing people to access asylum if they come from the countries of Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela through a parole program.
What about those who don't? The ACLU has pledged to sue the administration over this policy, comparing it to a Trump-era one. I know there are differences, but the ACLU asserts that your policy will put thousands of lives at risk. If this is so great, why didn't he do it in the first place?
Martha, well, we've talked about that, and Congress needs to act. And in the wake of congressional action, this is the step that we take, and it's not the first step that we've taken. But I respectfully disagree with the ACLU.
By the way, this line of questioning, having the ACLU and Martha Raddatz challenge him from the left on this issue, you guys are no different than Trump. This is all calculated politically to be able to help Joe Biden, actually, for people who are so angry and pissed off at the border that they're willing to vote for Donald Trump, even if they generally don't want to, but they recognize that Joe Biden's incapable of doing it. Well, this is allowing them to say, look, even the ACLU thinks we're like Trump, because we're enforcing the border, which of course they're not. They're not in any way whatsoever enforcing the border. But it is a fair question that Martha Raddatz asked, that this is such a great idea. Why didn't you do it up until now? And the lie is that they wanted congressional action. Well, so what? Clearly you can do it without congressional action. And you know the last time we had congressional action on immigration or border security? Do you know the answer to that question? 1987. 1987. That was the last time Congress acted in a bipartisan fashion. And by the way, Democrats immediately defied the deal they made with Ronald Reagan. They immediately went back on their deal. That's why Republicans should never negotiate with Democrats on immigration.
I anticipate they will sue us. We stand by the legality of what we have done. We stand by the value proposition. It's not only a matter of securing the border, Martha. We have a humanitarian obligation to keep vulnerable people out of the hands of exploitative smugglers. There have been many a story about the trauma and the tragedy inflicted by those organizations.
And how does this actually do that? I mean, that's obviously something you've been trying to do for a long time. Everyone's been trying to do.
We have increased the number of refugees that we will accept from the Western Hemisphere. We have built safe mobility offices in Colombia, Ecuador, Guatemala, Costa Rica to reach people where they are so they don't have to take the perilous journey. We are doing so very much to maintain the integrity of our asylum process and disincentivize people from risking their lives to reach the very dangerous southern border in between ports of entry.
Okay, thank you very much for joining us this morning, Mr.
Wow. That last part is really revealing, and we're going to delve into it a little bit here. But this is phenomenal. We're trying to keep the human smugglers and human traffickers and sex traffickers and drug smugglers from being able to exploit these individuals. And Martha Raddatz asked the legitimate question, how exactly are you doing that? I mean, everybody's trying to do that. How does this do that? Now, let me just offer a humble suggestion. The best way to put the human smugglers out of business, the coyotes, the drug smugglers who are using children as mules, the best way to put them out of business is to lock down the border. 0 crossings, 0 entries, 0 tolerance. Nobody crosses. No, you ask for asylum, you stay in Mexico. You don't come here. Period. End of story. See, the only reason why these human traffickers and these human smugglers and the drug cartels are able to exploit our laws is because they can guarantee to these poor, desperate individuals that if they get them to the border and then they cross, they'll be allowed in and they'll be able to stay. That's the product they're selling. This is basic economics. What does a human smuggler sell? They sell access to the United States of America. And they can legitimately tell their customers, these people, these children, these women who are being exploited, they can sell to their customers the service that, stick with me, you give me money, I'll get you through the terrain, I'll get you up to a point of entry, you go across, you claim asylum, and you're in. And they deliver. Now, if the United States changes its policy and says no one is allowed in, no one is allowed in. You want asylum, you claim asylum in your own country, and we'll have a hearing before we let you in, or you remain in Mexico. As soon as you do that, you put the human traffickers out of business. It's that simple. It's logical. But there was something else he said here that requires a little bit more investigation.
We have increased the number of refugees that we will accept from the Western Hemisphere. We have built safe mobility offices in Colombia, Ecuador, Guatemala, Costa Rica to reach people where they are so they don't have to take the perilous journey.
That is, for the first time on the record, the Secretary of Homeland Security confirming a program that has been discussed and talked about and written about in pages like Town Hall, Red State, PJ Media, and our friends over at the Federalist. I know they've delved into it as well, and Breitbart, that under the Biden administration, they are actually facilitating the transport of people who would normally be illegal immigrants coming into the country across our border. They're actually flying them in from their cities so they don't show up on Bill Melugин's drone footage at the border, or Julio Rosas covering the extraordinary scenes down on our southern border. Yeah, we don't want all you Venezuelans and Ecuadorians and Colombians and everything showing up on the border. Makes us look bad. So we'll set up these offices in your countries. We'll process you there. You're still an illegal immigrant. Don't worry, you're still going to be welcome. And then we'll fly you in. And we did a little digging, and here it is. Biden administration's State Department website. It's a safe mobility initiative. It's part of the Bureau of Population, Refugees, and Migration. United States has led the largest expansion in decades of lawful pathways to the United States to help refugees, vulnerable migrants, and other forcibly displaced persons in the Western Hemisphere. They're called safe mobility offices, as you just heard Mayorkas explain. And what happens here is the Safe Mobility Initiative facilitates expedited refugee processing via the U.S. Refugee Admissions Program and provides information or referrals to humanitarian parole, family reunification, and labor pathways through safe mobility offices in Colombia, Costa Rica, Guatemala, and Ecuador. Tens of thousands of people have already submitted a free application. SMOs are reviewing applications for eligibility and international protection needs and contacting applicants to provide information about a potential lawful pathway and to schedule an appointment for further processing. And this, of course, bypasses the legal immigration system completely. Now, there was something like this under Donald Trump that the Biden administration actually criticized and shut down the second they came into office. That was the idea that if you want to seek asylum, you do it in your home country. Now they've modified it, but they've actually regulated it, busted it up on steroids, and they've actually thrown a whole bunch of money to it to actually fly people in and the only reason they did it is to clean up the optics of what was going on the border. But again, the countries that are involved here, Costa Rica, why exactly does somebody get refugee status from Costa Rica? Costa Rica is a relatively prosperous country, that's relatively safe. There's no political persecution. Why in the hell would you be a refugee from Costa Rica or Colombia, for that matter? Fascinating. Maybe the Republicans should look into that too. After all, they're in charge of Congress. Might be a problem. But that's Alejandro Mayorkas, and he's guilty. He's guilty of undermining our nation's security. He's guilty of violating our immigration laws. He's guilty of lying before Congress and dereliction of his duty as well. Whole lot of guilty Democrats in today's show. I hope you were keeping track.